All right. All right. Thanks everyone for coming, and welcome to Alicia and Jessica, who are going to be presenting today on the Tasting History Project, a classroom and cafeteria collaboration. I'm very excited for this particular presentation because I love the Tasting History Project, and I'm so curious how a classroom teacher and food service were actually able to collaborate, because that's often a difficult thing to do. So it's a really great model for people to follow. Will you hit this next slide, Jessica? So if you're not familiar with Massachusetts Farm to School, welcome, and we're so glad you're with us today. There's a lot of ways you can get involved with our work, professional learning opportunities such as this one. We have a lot of networking events. We do a lot of policy around farm to school, universal meals, connecting farms to schools, and vice versa. And we have a very active communication. So there's a lot of different newsletters and announcements you can get on by connecting. And our email address is on the slide deck, so you'll see that. And I'm going to introduce our presenters today. We go to the next slide. All right, so we have Jessica Lander, who you'll be hearing from, who is a history and civics teacher at Lowell High School. And congratulations, was the 2023 Massachusetts History Teacher of the Year. No small feat. Jessica is also the author of Making Americans, Stories of Historic Struggles, New Ideas, and Inspiration in Immigrant Education. And we have Alicia Spooner Gomez, who's a registered dietitian and general manager for Lowell Public Schools with Aramark. And so I'm going to hand the floor over to them. If you have questions during the presentation, please throw them in the chat, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end to answer your questions.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. We're excited to be here with all of you. We're excited to learn from all of you. We'd love to start off with having you do a little reflecting and thinking about where both you come from. We want to know. So thank you for those who are putting in the chat, but also on your own experiences with food in school. So I'm gonna give you a minute to think about your own growing up. Did your school have a cafeteria? And if so, did you see or eat food in the cafeteria that you also ate at home? And then if you brought food, what did you bring? And was that food similar or different from what you ate at home? And so I'm just going to give you a quiet moment to reflect on this and share that in the chat for us to sort of get us started. Give everyone a quiet moment to sort of think about this. You're also welcome. It's a very small group, so you're welcome to also just unmute and share if you would like to do that as well. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Priscilla. So most of the food was similar, but it was highly processed, not fresh. Thank you both for sharing. Alicia, what was the food like in your school growing up?
I just sat here and was thinking about it. I would say I did not eat school lunch. I know it's funny that I'm working in it, because it really wasn't anything like we ate at home. It was a lot more processed than what my parents ate, prepared for us, but and more institutional. So I agree with Dina on that one.
Yeah. Ellen, thank you so much for sharing this. So reading this, the sort of what was considered junk food, pizza, never got it home. And then also talking about being a little embarrassed about what your parents sent for lunch. I mean, I think a lot of my students feel similarly, and I think that's something that a lot of my colleagues talk about too. So I really appreciate you bringing that perspective and the stories into this space. We are going to build on that. Thank you for sharing with us. We're hoping, particularly because it's a small group, that we can engage. You're more than welcome to come off mute, or you can text in the chat, whichever you feel most comfortable with. Our goal for our session is to share a little bit about the work we're doing in our school and our collaboration, to create some space for you to learn from our young people, and then to open it up for questions. We probably won't take the whole hour and a half, particularly because it's a small, intimate group. But that leaves more time for conversation and questions. Thank you, Hope, for sharing too. Home lunch. And thank you for sharing that bringing lunch from home can be a real challenge for a lot of our kids, a lot of us, how it's perceived, how it perceives then sort of impacts how we think we're perceived and how much we feel a sense of belonging or not in our schools. It can be the big things, and it can be little things, or seemingly little things like this. So we're going to talk about some of the work we're doing, but we'd love to also have this be more collaborative and a conversation about how we think about the role of belonging and the role food can play for that for our young people. So what we're here to talk about today is a project in collaboration. It started back in my classroom in 2018. And I was writing a curriculum. We start off, so I teach U.S. history and civics to recent immigrant and refugee students. I have the honor to teach recent immigrant and refugee students from about 30 different countries, from Colombia to the Democratic Republic of the Congo to Cambodia. And at the beginning of the school year, in our study of U.S. history, we start off the year by studying the stories of immigrants who came to the country more than 100 years ago, in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And when I was first crafting this curriculum many years ago now, I came across a lot of lessons that had something along the lines of have your kids imagine they had to leave their country or come to a new country. But of course, my kids don't have to imagine, because my kids are experts. And so I wanted to think of a way to center their knowledge, their expertise, and their stories of immigration in our unit on immigration, to connect to the past, to the present, and to the personal. And for my students to really see that their stories, their histories were a part of this longer history and story of American immigration and American history, and that we had so much to learn from them. And so back in 2017, I created, actually modeling it off of a project that my seventh and eighth grade teacher had done, different but modeled after, and I reached out to her, but created what became the Tasting History Project, where each student would choose a favorite family recipe. We'd center our family's knowledge and stories and expertise, and centering our families as teachers in our classroom. So our students would have to go home, and they'd have to go ask their families for these recipes, or call up their families if they lived overseas, or text them. And so we have kids calling grandpas in Brazil and texting aunts in Cambodia. And they have to get those recipes and write them down. Then they translate those recipes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then included in that, they had to share a story of self, a story of that food, its importance, their memories of it, and then a little bit about their journey to the US. So weaving in their own histories of migration and sharing that alongside their food. And we published our first book back in 2017, 2018. And then since then, the project has grown in a whole range of ways that I would never have imagined when I was first setting out to do this. But that's an overview of the project. It is, at its heart, a project of stories and histories, and the importance of those family traditions and recipes. And so the overview, as I was sort of breaking it out, is this is an opportunity for students to explore, to reflect on food culture that might have traveled across many continents. They write that family recipe. They practice clear descriptive writing. We do probably 10 rounds of edits on their recipes and stories as students work first to translate into English and then translate their recipes into language others can understand. So say, cook until done. What does that mean? And then they do that reflecting work, reflecting on those memories, the first time they cooked that food, a lot of first times they cook that food, it usually ends up burned. The first times they learned that food or tasted that food. And then about their migrations and how food has played a role in their migration. Is it something they still cook here? What does it remind them of? And this being an entry point in for them to be for them to see themselves and for the community to see themselves as teachers and leaders in our community. What I really like about this project, particularly as it's early in the year, is that it really centers our students' voice and our students' knowledge and assets. It really centers our families as teachers in the work we do in the classroom. And then this community partnership that we're going to talk about is also really deeply important and is something, as I said, that we didn't really think about or even imagine when we started this work, but has become such a powerful integral component of this project in more recent years. So I will talk more about the cookbook, and I actually want to have you look at parts of the cookbook. But I also want to talk about what came after the cookbook, because we published 3 cookbooks, and we were able to share the Tasting History Project out into the community. And that's what led to what became the collaboration between Alicia and I and her team. And so I would love to sort of center that, and we'll come back to sort of the elements of the cookbook in a little bit. But a few pictures of students sharing their book and just celebrating their work as authors. And just a few pictures in, if you don't have a copy of your own, the food is delicious. I guess I forgot to mention that a key component is after they write their recipe and they write their story and they do all this editing, they have to cook the recipe and bring it into the classroom for all of us to try. And it's one of the most delicious days, but also a really powerful day because it is seeing kids who are starting to become friends, because this project sits in the early part of our year, then try each other's food, trying food that they've never had before, and finding connections, finding things they love from countries that are halfway around the world. And the way that food, as we know, we're all involved in food spaces, can be a connector. And so there's beautiful moments in the classroom and the sharing of the food. And then I, of course, take the photos of the food that they have cooked. But what I want to do is turn this over to Alicia to tell about where this project became more than just a class project, but then spanned across the district. So
Yeah.
let me turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. So I think I talk about this later in the slides too, so we can probably skip over that. But I think about 3 years ago, when the cookbook came out, there was an article in the Lowell Sun, which is a newspaper in Lowell, about tasting history, and it started getting my wheels thinking, like, we should connect and see what we can do. So I reached out to Jessica and I was like, well, I talked to my chef and I was like, this crazy idea, which he totally was like, of course you do, Alicia. And I was like, I think it would be a great way for us to connect with the students and really expand our menu and be able to bring menu items onto our menu. And we started particularly just at the high school, and then be able to spread them throughout the district. So I connected with Jessica and we started brainstorming and being like, okay, what can we do? So we met, and really at that point, my chef was Mike. And so he and Jessica really like took it off and spun with it. And she helps direct us on what we should do, but our goal was to pick a recipe from the book from different regions, because we wanted to be able to celebrate and share recipes across the world. So not just like all Spanish recipes or all Asian recipes. It really wanted to embrace everyone. So we would meet and discuss the recipes. We would choose it based on the regions. And then that's when the chef would start doing some recipe and development. And he would take it and start to cook with it and use the ingredients and get the ingredients and really try to make it as authentic as possible. And I would come and help, probably really mostly tell him no, to be honest with you. To me, so we could meet the nutrition regulations, because we really wanted to make it school nutrition, so we could serve it on our menu and we could serve it across the district. We have 28 schools, so we wanted to be able to share it not just with the high school. I firmly believe that the high school shouldn't get everything, and we should be able to share menu items to all of our students. So we would work together, we would collaborate and get the like meal, from our point of view, as authentic as possible, meeting the regulations. And then the best part comes is we would go to the classroom. So they would make the recipe, the chef would, and we bring it to the classroom. And this really was a turning point for us. So this was a time for us, you know, for the chef to really shine and see what he did. And the students, man, they give great feedback. And it's time for them to teach us too. So we're able to be like, tell us what you think of this meal that was yours, and the student's always there, so it's kind of fun to highlight. I think in one of our pictures, Jessica's really great at always making sure that the student with the cookbook takes a picture with the meal with the chef too, so they get a personal hot spotlight that this is their recipe, and be able to share their story, and they give us feedback, and it's great. Most of the time it's been really positive, and from there we're able to make tweaks. So a lot of times we would like more salt. And so I'm usually there to give the good old dietitian speech on, you know, sodium, and we can't do that. And then the chef usually pinpoints like, okay, I know we can't do this, but this is what I did, and tell me what you think. And it really just is a good time for them to give us their feedback, and so we can make it as authentic as possible. And I always love to educate about school nutrition, because I do feel like it's so important, and something that's lacking, because, you know, there is so many regulations and we have to meet so many things. So really be able to have them understand what's happening in their cafeteria, and be able for them to see, like, we can take the foods that you're talking about and that you publish and make them as authentic as possible with meeting our regulations. So we have a great time, we share, eat, which is always fun. And then from there, we will do taste tests. And it'll go on the menu. So when we move things, we always taste it at the high school first, because that's where the home of the students, right? So this is their project. So we always run it there first. The first one we ever did was Locklack, and it was, I can't even tell you, it was insane. The line wrapped around our cafeteria, it was, we couldn't even keep up. Like, kids were waiting their whole lunch period to get this meal, and the chefs were literally like cooking it. Like, we just kept having to we had to go buy more beef. Like, that's how popular it was. We were kind of run out before the last lunch, and our lunches are really spread out, so we were able to do that, but it was like amazing. So we were able to run it there, and just the first time that Lowell's had something like this, and just spoke volumes, to see all of these recipes. I think the greatest thing is the students' reactions when they come in, and then it's actually in their cafeteria, something from their home, and they're able to share it. And it's evolved. We've done so many recipes, but each one, and Jessica and I were standing there. I remember last year and just being like, we served Quabli Palau. I hope I said it right. We always get to practice saying the menu items too. But it was the first time with halal meat, and just to see the students' reactions and excitement that it was on in their cafeteria and on the menu, and they're able to share that with their friends, has been amazing. And that's one of the greatest things. Not all the menu items are as great of a hit as the Locklack, but it does speak volumes to our community and the students that we serve. And I think that that's really important. And then we do put menu items out across the district. And I think across the district, that's been one of the most powerful things, is that principals have said to me, like, they've heard their students be like, wow, we eat this at home too. And sharing and saying that to their friends. Like, their friends may not know what this is, but they're able to explain it to them, be like, yeah, my mom makes this, or my dad makes this, or my grandmother makes this. And that's able to, I think, bring a really great like warmth and good feeling about the cafeteria, and really bring some great excitement about school lunches. So to me, that's been the greatest takeaway, that there's just been this like home connection, and that it's not just at the high school, but it's been like throughout. And principals have said it, teachers, administrators, and even like social media will share, some families have said that. So I think that's been a really great connection. We have a really great student engagement program. And so we do a lot of taste tests, and it's a way for students that maybe haven't tried a menu item. And so they're able to try it before it comes on their menu. And then we're able to share our data with the schools, social media administrators, being like, this is a tried and true recipe, and it's the students love it, and this is what it looks like, this is what it tastes like, and get some good feedback. So it's been really successful. I mean, this was an elementary school that we tried it at Lock that everyone was like, oh, the elementary students aren't going to love it. And we were like, well, let's go and do some taste tests. And the results were that they really did. And it just really helps tell the story and like connect it, so that not everyone's getting it, and the staff can try it. Even the food service staff, a lot of them have never had these foods, right? So there's foods, I've tried things that I've never had, and boy, it's delicious. And so it's really getting them to get a buy-in, them to experience it too, so they know what it's supposed to taste like. And they can help their students when it comes onto the menu. So this has been another really important connection that we do, is to try it with our students before it goes out onto the menu. Do you want to advance to the next slide?
Absolutely. And I just wanted to sort of add and reflect on what Alicia was saying. I think what's been really powerful to watch this collaboration grow for me as a teacher and for my students, from what they tell me, is a range of things. One, first, is that collaborative element that really Alicia's team is coming and really seeing our students as experts and teachers. And so what she was describing, that they're coming in, they've adapted the recipe to cook at scale and to cook with all the nutrition guidelines. But then they're centering my students as the experts. So they're coming to them and asking, so did we get it right? And what suggestions do you have? And I think that's really powerful for our kids to hear. They're so often used to seeing adults in places of authority, and adults with the answers, adults with the ones where they have the correct answer. And here we're changing that narrative, and we're really centering our students as the ones with the answers, with the expertise, and that we're seeking out their knowledge and wanting to learn from them. And so I think I've been really, really grateful for Alicia and her team in just the setup of first the reaching out and wanting to center our students' stories and voices and recipes, and then for how it's gone about, and that process, and that trying it with our students and really celebrating their stories. And so here we just wanted to share a few pictures of the work. So this was, as Alicia was saying, the first recipe that we served, which was a recipe combining Samnang and Nampise's recipes for Laklak. And just as Alicia was saying, just the amount of kids who were faces lighting up, and I just stood in the cafeteria watching it for a while, of I cook this at home. This is something that I've never seen in the cafeteria. I think too, really powerfully. So we have the second largest Cambodian community outside of Cambodia. And yet Cambodian food had not yet been served. And so Alicia's team brought that to the district and brought that through the recipes and stories of our students. And so that's a really powerful thing, that our kids can walk into the cafeteria and see the food that they eat at home served in the cafeteria. And we saw that on the faces of kids and in the ways they describe that, also in the social media posts we'll talk about, and the ways in which we're really putting them front and center. So as kids walk into the cafeteria, they're seeing not just the food, but the cookbook and the story and the student and a little bit about the country. And it's this way we're introducing students who recognize this food and eat it all the time to foods from around the world. And then also kids who maybe have never tried these foods to foods from all around the world. And so it is the first time in our cafeteria that we've served food from Cambodia, Somaliland, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Guatemala, Brazil. And that's a really powerful thing. And it's an ongoing collaboration. So we promised also some social media, and we do want to center our students' stories too. So we want to actually give you time to read from their stories. But just a few of the recipes we've served, and luckily we're doing this presentation right before dinner because I'm looking at these going, now I'm getting hungry. But the results too have been really powerful in the feedback we've been given and received. Alicia, I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about the training before we share some of the feedback.
So one of the other important parts, which I'm sure everyone's like, what about the staff? So we have a pretty big, robust training program. And so we decided we weren't going to put anything on the menu until we were able to explain it to the cooks. I mean, a lot of this was recipes they've never tried. It's recipes they've never made. And so how can we break it down to them, have them try it, and have them have feel comfortable before they make it, and also learn how to say the recipe words, because the names of the recipes, because that also was different. When we would go to Jessica's class, we would have them say it to us over and over again. And even the day we serve it, we're like, okay, tell us one more time, because it is different, something we're not used to. So we always review it at meetings. We have the staff try it. We review the marketing that we're putting out. So we really want to make sure when it goes out there, those pictures that we just showed you the slide before, those are up in the cafeteria on the serving lines. We share them with the principals across the district so they understand that this is actually a student that goes to Lowell Public Schools, and this is their story, and this is why we're sharing it, and just a little background on it. And so we have our staff try it, and then even do some in our bigger culinary trainings. We break down the recipes and have them make it with us, especially if it's a more difficult recipe. And so really doing some hands-on training. And then the chefs make a recipe build card, and this has proven to be really successful for us. So simplify it with pictures, with actually how to build it and prep it along the way. So here's an example of
Rose Complejo?
A rose complejo. I'm like, oh, my eyesight's getting really bad. So just an example on how with the measurements and the pounds, and then step by step how they do it. And this isn't in here, but then we also show them. Well, I guess the top picture shows you presentation wise, this is what you should be looking at. But it really has helped them. So we have so many schools, we can't be at every school to be there to execute the day of. So they're able to use this paper copy in the kitchen so they can see the steps of it and how to build it. And this has been really something that the cooks love. They've asked us to do this with all of our recipes. But something that we're trying with all the new ones, because this has really helped us keep the authenticity of the recipe, and keep it standardized across the district. So this has been really something that we've done and that they've enjoyed. And so, man, we've got a lot of positive vibes from this. So we, Lunch Assist, which is a social media handle, they have posted about our student taste test. We were recently in the Lowell Sun again, regarding the glorious food school menus and the diversity behind it. That was last month. We got a School Nutrition Association mention off of this media newspaper article, and then from there we actually were in Food Management Magazine article regarding the diversity of our menu. We've been in the Boston Globe for it. Jessica was interviewed, Chef Mike and I, when we first collaborated many moons ago, and so it's coming back and reliving because we've continued to diversify our menu. It's not something that we just did once. It's been a continued partnership, and we're just continuing to add new things and have our students try it. And it's just been really successful. And, really using social media to tell the story. I think one of the greatest things we can do is share it with those posters that we make and the posters that the students make. So even though their recipe isn't the one being highlighted, their recipe is still highlighted and their story is still highlighted in the cafeteria, which I think speaks volumes. And continuing to share the story. So every once in a while when we run Luck Luck, I put out, hey, this is, the story and this is where the recipe came from, and kind of continue to tell the story of the students. And it just gets good vibes going, right? So this one person was like, this lunch looks great, or I wish this is my lunch when I went to school. So just some of the publicity that we get, really showing the food, educating about it. Here's some that Jessica has shared too. My students loved it, wanted the choicest meal for their positive moment of the day, which is great. I love this. Can I go back to high school for this? We actually get a lot of that from parents. Like, I wish they served this when they post, like when I was in school. So I think that's really great. Them understanding like it has evolved and that we are doing a lot more different things. So it just really has been a great.
Yeah, no, I think the feedback has been powerful to hear from both my students in what they say about it to me, or the ways in which they're talking with their friends and what's overheard, the ways in which it's expressed through, say, as Alicia saying, the line, and how it wraps around the cafeteria on days where we're doing tasting history. And then the comments on Facebook have been really powerful, and some funny and some fun and heartwarming. And some I included the one in the bottom corner of just this person sharing that how it would have made a difference in their own schooling if they saw their history, their culture, their food in school, and that sense of belonging. And so I include that in here too, because I think it speaks to the importance of all these small choices we make in our cafeterias. It speaks to what some of you were sharing in the chat at the beginning of how either we feel included in the foods we eat, or we made fun of. All of those seemingly small moments, small comments, or small items in terms of like it's food one day, send a signal to our kids of what is valued and what's not valued. And kids pick up on that and they carry that with them. And so what are the ways in which we can be ensuring that our students feel that their identities, their histories, their stories are celebrated and valued in all aspects of our schools, and in this case in our cafeterias and on the plates we're serving our kids in breakfast or lunch. Now, what I wanted to do in sort of the last third of our conversation is to really both create time for questions, our conversation, but also to center our students' voices in this. And so I selected two of our students from last year's cookbook. And this is the page from the cookbook. If you have a chance to get a copy of the cookbook, this is what one page will look like inside. So it includes the student's recipe, the student's story, and then a picture of their food from the food they brought into our class. And what I'd like to do is to give you about 3-ish minutes to read each of these stories. I have it slightly bigger, and I'm going to give you 2 stories to read. I'll give 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll move on to the next story. And then I have just a few questions for us to think about, having read and reflected on these 2 stories of young people, Jamili and then Haroon. So here's Jamili's story. And what I'd love for you to do is to just take a couple moments to sit with her words, her story, her wisdom. I'll give us a few moments and then I'll shift to Haroon's story. And then I'm going to have us shift to looking at Haroon's story. But if you need more time, just text me in the chat or come off mute for 1 second. Otherwise, I'll give us a shift over to the next story. Excellent. So here's Haroon's story for biryani. And again, this is his page in the cookbook. And I'm going to shift us to just looking at his story. I'll give us another moment or so to read this, and then I'm going to ask you guys to reflect. I'm a high school teacher, so we'll have a good discussion. Okay. So hopefully you've had time to read these two stories. And now what I'd like you to do is to reflect on these questions. What student strengths are woven into these stories? I think in the work that I do and the book I wrote last year, the importance of our student strengths is something that is really central to the work I think about every day, and the ways in which our schools don't always celebrate and recognize and value and invest in those strengths. So starting off with, what are the student strengths that are woven into these stories? Next, what are the connections that you see that students making, drawing, particularly around food? What connections do you see between the stories and between you and your own work? How do these stories extend your thinking or make you think differently or give you new ideas? And what questions do you have? And so I'd love for you to take a moment to reflect on these. We're a small group, and so I definitely invite you to come off mute to share some of your thoughts on any of these questions. Or if you're feeling more comfortable to share in the chat, you could do that as well. But we wanted to create time so it's not just us talking at you, but to both center our student stories in this space, even though they're not with us this evening, and then also to have discussion to learn from all of you.
Hey, Jessica, I'd like to come off mute.
Please.
I'm not going to come off video because I actually have to go back to school. So I came home and I literally have my pajamas on for an hour.
That
So
sounds great. No judgment.
I'm just
Love
going to
that.
talk. So, yeah, I got to go back in like 15 minutes. I'm like, as you know, I'm a huge fan of your project, and having Alicia and your food service just makes it even more exciting and what you guys are doing. But I would like you to sincerely convey to your students that, you know, what they do is they really bring it all back to the feeling of, food as community and culture and tradition that school meals has lost because we went so far to the compliance end and the nutrition end. And I think we all see that now. So, I don't, your students, don't understand it from that aspect, but what they've really done is just honed in on, why we all love to eat, basically. I mean, they've very clearly sort of brought it back to the way we should be thinking about food with students. So, congratulations to your students for doing that with their stories.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Ellen. Thank you for coming off mute, and I support you in the pajama wearing. I will absolutely convey it. And I think also, I mean, it's powerful for our students to hear from the community. And so whether that is posts online, whether that's letters that are written, I'm always happy to convey letters to my students. We have a wall of letters that the community has written to my students, posted in our room. I think it's really powerful when our students are hearing that from the community, because I hear it from my students, particularly when we do our action civics work in the spring, and I'm happy to talk about that at another time. But we, for that project, reach out to community members, and my students will often go, well, but this is pretend, right? Like, no one's going to actually write us back. We're not actually going to send this. And then when we do send it, and we do hear responses, or in some cases for this action civics work, adults come into our classroom to engage and learn and listen to my students and the work they're doing around a particular community challenge. Those are the moments of change, because it's really showing that it's adults in our community, it's leaders in our community who want to and are excited to listen to our young people and take them seriously, that I see the transformation that happens. So it means a lot for you to say that, and I definitely invite any and all into the classroom or in other ways of sharing that, because I think it's powerful for those words that you're sharing, Ellen, and the importance of the words, for them to be hearing it from so many different people. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to reflect on any of these questions? Any that's calling to them?
Well, I love the specific memories that the food elicits in the students. So in their writing, I loved in the lemon mousse, just the detail of the names given to the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I love that, just the detail. And in
Mhm.
Haroon's story, the memory of going to the bazaar. And that's, to me, that's one of the great things about food in terms of sharing with people. Are those stories, and it's a great equalizer, right? Because we all have stories, and so it's just a great way to get to know people in a deeper way, and just get some details that just bring color and flavor to our lives. And we all have them, so it's just a great to allow students that avenue to share, or any people to share, and it's a great exchange.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't read Jamili's story without crying. And so many of the stories, particularly knowing them, but even I think not knowing them, the memories that they're invoking, the importance of these memories to them as they're navigating and creating new homes and new lives here, it's really, it hits home for me. Thank you, Dina, for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm going to unmute for a second too, and just to echo what everyone else is saying, it's just really powerful to hear what the students are doing and becoming the educators, because even reading about the second person, the first one was beautiful with the great grandparents, but the second one, just knowing the facts about the U.S. military in Afghanistan, it kind of hit home for me, because I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and we had the Vietnam War going on, and we had Vietnamese refugees coming to live in our town. And the way one of my best friends, basically in high school, just communicated with us was through food. She taught us the Vietnamese recipes, how to make things, and it was just such a beautiful way of us understanding her culture. So to me, this is amazing because the students really are teaching the community, sharing their strengths, and just the beautiful writing that they're doing associated with it is great.
Thank you, Priscilla. Really appreciate your reflections and for sharing. Really, really thank you. I want to shift us in a moment, but want to create space if anyone else has another reflection on any of these questions, anything that's speaking to them.
What I noticed is kind of the resilience that they're demonstrating. Like they're telling the story of their food, but they're like the positivity that surrounds that, and like we still make this, and we went here, and then we moved there, and now we are here, and I'm just so excited. And it's just like amazing, really, to think about that, to think about like all of the changes that especially the second author had been through, and the positivity with which he landed in this country, and is, you know, sharing now food from his home country. It's that I thought was really amazing.
Thank you for sharing that. No, I mean, I think the resilience is really one of those key strengths that our students, or particularly immigrant origin students, bring. Just thinking about how our schools can better identify and value and invest in that, so that our kids really see those as strengths. But I see it every day with our kids, and we see that absolutely, as you say, Hope, woven into these stories. In the interest of time, I want to shift us a little bit to sort of thinking about your work. So we've told you about our collaboration, this project that started just as a unit project in my class, and then grew into something where we now have 6 cookbooks, and a partnership with Alicia and her team, and the sharing of and centering of our students' recipes across the district. That's actually not even to mention the other part of this collaboration, which is the cookbook has been now centered in 3rd grade curriculum. And so all 3rd graders in the city of Lowell now study the cookbook as part of their study of history. But I want to think about your roles and the work that you're interested in. We wanted to keep this a slightly shorter session, just recognizing all of your time, and knowing that your time is valuable, and some of you have to go back to school later this evening. But thinking about what are the ideas that are sticking with you from listening to these stories, what questions do you have? And then depending on your school setting, how might you apply some of these ideas into your school or into districts? Are there ideas that are similar that are working in other places? But I think I'm always really interested in how do we build on ideas, or how do ideas sort of spark new ways of thinking? And it doesn't have to be exactly the same. But I would be curious if there are either projects that are similar that you're working on, or are there things that strike you that you would like to do in your district? We're also here to answer questions about if this is something that you would like to try to do some form of, to answer questions about that specifically, but wanting to open up a space for collaboration and sharing, and for asking those questions.
I have a question. I think it's possibly more of a question for Alicia, because
Okay.
it's kind of a kitchen question. So my work is largely, well, I'm a garden educator, so my work is largely about growing food with kids outside in the school garden. But I am also I'm always interested in getting food from the gardens into the cafeteria, and we try and grow more culturally appropriate, culturally relevant foods. But it sounds like in making a lot of these dishes, there's a lot of fresh prep that is going on in the kitchen. And that's always this, balance. And you said a lot of you have a really strong training program. So I'm just wondering how you train, what skills were already in place to prepare these things, what new things you may have had to train on, and how does the training actually work? Funding wise, logistical, do you use outside services to actually do those trainings? Because those are all things that I'm thinking about in terms of getting more, whether it's culture relevant or just fresh foods into cafeterias.
Yeah, so we part of the DESE guidelines for being a CEP school, we have to do so many hours of training per year. And so we try to do, in those trainings, we've decided like, okay, we need to really start doing some more hands-on, because we realized there really just is no culinary, a lot of staff just doesn't have the culinary background to execute these recipes, or even, in regards to you, like being part of the farm to school, we have a very big farm to school program as well. Just getting them used to handling fresh fruits and vegetables and knives and different equipment regarding it. So we started focusing some of our meetings really on hands-on culinary. And we had some successes and some like, wow, that didn't work just because we have so much staff, but really getting them hands-on and used to it and seeing the product and trying the different spices. So we did spice training, and so we would bring spices, have them use it in different ways, have them try it, smell it, and realize like what countries these come from and what recipes you can put them in, and you'll see them in these recipes on our menu. And so really just bringing it down to basics, things that we were seeing out when we were doing our rounds throughout the district. So it was like spice training, culinary skills into how do they cut these fresh vegetables and herbs, and how do they store them, and what do they smell like, taste like, and really just bringing it to hands-on and having them try the foods that are going to be on the menu. And that's been really successful for us. And really just trying to make as much connections as possible. So we, besides tasting history, have a lot of other diverse menu items on our menu. And so it's really just exposing them, teaching them about it. And then we've reached out. So I'm very lucky to have chefs on my team. And so that are really willing to teach them and have taken this to another level. My first chef was Mike, and he, like, I had this crazy idea and he went with it, and we would have these trainings. But then during April vacation, which we're going to do again this year, we just hosted a culinary symposium, we called it. So it was optional. We did pay the staff, but we had them come in and really do basic culinary stuff, but also try different menu items and get feedback and quick like show them how to do like quick tricks in the kitchen. So that's been really successful, and they loved that. That's something that my district was willing to pay for. I think our first one, we had 50 employees, which was more than I anticipated, to be honest with you, especially during a vacation, but was really successful. And our culinary trainings, our staff love. They would prefer that than to be sitting in an auditorium and me talking to them, or my staff talking to them. So that's been really great. We do work with Project Bread, and they do some culinary trainings for us. So we have a great partnership with them. I've done some John Stalker culinary trainings with my cooks. And then this year, we've done different things. We have, in the past, we work closely with Mill City Grows, which is a farm in our town, and they do a lot of community work with us. They've come in and talked about growing diverse crops and what they look like and the reason that they do them, and really done the whole farm to school education for them. And then we've also, this past year, I wanted to really have them hear from some people in the district, some professionals. So some English language staff came in and they gave a wonderful presentation just on the students in our community and what it looks like in their country when they eat lunch and what their lunch looks like and comparing it to our lunch. So really just focusing on different avenues. So not just culinary, but them learning about the cultures and what the students are like, and then having them think what it's like to come into our kitchen, and giving them that education, and then like spices and I think that's been really successful. The staff has really enjoyed it and learned a lot, and so it's really just, we were trying to hit as many different ways to educate them as possible.
That's That's a really fantastic synopsis. Thank you.
Good. I'm like,
I
was
will
it too long?
definitely. No, it's really thorough, which is exactly what I need because like like the fact that your district paid for it and the fact that like you're doing everything from spices to knives to like what lunch looks like in other countries. Like that's really like broad. So yeah, that's really helpful because I can now like go to the districts that I work in and like talk about some of the different options. And there are some things like that I, as the school garden person, could like do a whole herbs and spices thing with that. Like I can, like I could go in and do that. But there are other skills that I'm like, I don't know if I'm qualified to do knife skills. Like I cook, but I think I would need like a project bread kind of thing to
Right.
do that,
And
or a professional chef.
yeah, and I will tell you, if you go on the John Stalker website, there's a Crisp 2.0, and they have videos you can play. So there's definitely resources out there like that you can use if you don't know. And I think what's been important to me is also to have other people come teach it. So it's not just my staff, but it's like this is something happening across Massachusetts, across the nation, and you know, across the United States. So then this is how other people are coming in and sharing it. So it's not just like we're doing it here, but this is the story and this is really what's happening in school nutrition. And that's been really powerful for us. So, I mean, I can put my email in the chat and you're more than welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions or.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Jessica, do you see that in the chat about let us know where we could purchase a cookbook?
I can, and actually that was our next slide, so we can continue answering some questions, but exciting news, hot off the press as of like yesterday. The new cookbook is out. So Alicia's going to drop into the chat where you can get the new cookbook. It just went live on our school store yesterday. It has 99 recipes from 17 countries. They are delicious, having tried all the recipes. And so great question. And no, we did not ask Priscilla to ask that question so lovingly of just like giving us that, that in there. The new cookbook is delicious and inspiring. And so I hope you'll check out the book. And it also makes for a great holiday gift. I'll just do that plug. But I think too, if this is something that you're thinking about for your district or for folks who you know in the education space, I know sort of like handheld tangible examples are really powerful. And so that can be a useful thing to just have and see. So yes, that is the cookbook. We know some of you have to rush off and we all have very busy lives. I know some of you are heading back to school, but are there any last questions that we can answer? For those who have to head off in a moment, just thank you for coming and joining us and for learning about this project. You're more than welcome to reach out to both of us if you have more questions. I also really encourage you to check out my website. Maybe Alicia, you can put it into the chat. On my website under Tasting History, you can actually listen to a whole bunch of podcasts, including one with Dina and some others. You can hear our kids in their voices sharing about their food. We're going to be doing some more podcasts with our students this year, so you can listen to our young people who are authors of this wonderful cookbook. But I think it's really powerful to be listening to them in their own words. Any other questions for us?
And I'll also take these links and then we'll send them out to the people who couldn't come tonight with whatever we send out. We'll send these links out as well.
Hi, I don't have a question. I just, I'm a student at UMass and I'm learning about how to be a teacher, and I'm working with the Amherst School Gardens program. And they do a very similar program in 4th grade. Like it's much more pared down than this, but like the 4th graders go interview somebody in their community, and then we come back and plan some crops that we can grow in the school gardens that reflect those recipes, which is very cool. But anyway, I just wanted to say I'm so glad that I got to listen to this because I feel so inspired. This is so cool, and it did not happen in my high school for sure. And school lunch was like a neglected, like no one liked it. I don't know. But anyway, this is just really great to hear.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing that. That is wonderful. And also, I hope you check into the chat because Dina is making some connections and thoughts about Amherst. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's really exciting to hear that that's happening in 4th grade. I mean, we'd love to learn more. So if you want to reach out and share more, because I know we always have ways to learn from each other. And if there are ways that we can be useful at all in the work that you're doing, please let us know. But thank you for joining us. And we're so glad that you were inspired by this. And thank you for being in collaboration and doing this work in partnership with us, just in different parts of the state. No, I agree with you that, I mean, my high school lunches were it was like a lot of watery pasta, and very dry salads. And it was not representative of the student body at all. And so how do we change that? But that's work that we will do together. Well, I want to thank everyone. Alicia, do you have any last things that you wanted to say?
No, thank you all, and please reach out, and you know, you can just start small and connect with one teacher or share one recipe, and that really just speaks volumes. So although we have a large program ahead of us, it doesn't have to be. So you guys can always think that you can start small and just great things can happen. So.
Well, Dina, let's turn it back over to you. Is there anything else you want to say before we close this out?
No, I didn't put my email on the slide deck, but I'm putting it in the chat. It's Dinah@massfarmerschool.org. I will add it to the slides. We'll be sending the slides and the recording out to everyone who registered, as well as the links that are in here. And Jessica and Alicia, thank you so much for sharing. Your work is really inspiring, and it's just a great model. And I'm hoping that more districts take part of it and reach out to you to get support if they need, and start small and build it up, right? And I like that they can start with one recipe or one sharing, one thing, and not have to do this. I mean, it's you've developed such a really exciting and large project, right? So I don't want people to feel intimidated, and so I appreciate that they could just start small and build it like you did. And so thank you.
And now we have a new book we're going to start with in January. So
yeah,
we're ready.
So we'll share your book link too for people, maybe for holiday presents.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. I've given it. It's wonderful.
Because I know once they sell out, they're gone. Like you can't get the back ones.
That's true. That is true.
Buy mine first.
You got to get it while it's out. So no, thank you so much. And everyone who's here, thanks. We know time is really valuable, and thanks for staying late with us. And Alicia and Jess, thank you so much for sharing after a long day at your teaching and your food service work.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting us both on, and thank you everyone for joining us.